Nicknamed the God of War, Deiveson Figueiredo has ripped through the flyweight division on his path to the title and racked up some impressive title wins in the process, and is now tearing through the bantamweight division, with his only loss at 135 being to Piotr in a relatively close fight. Destructive style. So, what makes his style so incredible? He has excellent timing with his punches. He has some incredibly vicious elbows, a solid kicking game, insane scrambles and wrestling skills, and he's extremely good at dictating the pace of a fight to his advantage. So, let's start off with the punch timing. Deiveson Figueiredo's most terrifying ability is by far his ability to time his power punches well. But how does he do this? So, Figueiredo keeps a very long, wide stance, almost like a karate fighter, and he extends his lead hand out. He waits and he waits and he waits and he measures until his opponent makes a mistake, either overswinging on a shot, or squaring themselves up with a kick, or just cornering themselves against the cage. That way, because he's patient, he knows when he can commit 110% to his punch, right? So that's why he gets the most out of it. Now, he will also, sort of with his pace, lull his opponent into sort of a calm rhythm, right? He's not throwing anything, and then he just explodes, completely cracking his opponent through the guard. And this works really, really well. Yoel Romero does something similar, where he'll just keep a low pace, and then he'll explode, right? This is how he was able to drop Marlon Vera and Piotr, who are both fighters with notoriously good chins. Elbows. Deiveson Figueiredo has some absolutely vicious elbows, and you don't really see a lot of elbows in MMA, at least while standing. But Deiveson Figueiredo is very good at sneaking his elbows in at very particular times. He'll start getting into punching combinations with his opponent, and as his opponent's focusing on the hands, Figueiredo will just cut through with an elbow, and then swap back to punching, and then swap back to elbows, right? And he'll transition from wrestling positions, go to elbows, and even in his fight with Pantoja, when Pantoja was trying to clinch, he essentially put his arms over Pantoja's and started pummeling elbows in over the top. Now, against an opponent that tries to pressure back or stand their ground, right, against Figueiredo's a big pressure fighter, some people just want to go toe-to-toe with him, right? If someone's coming forward and being aggressive, hit him with an elbow, that'll stop that right away, right? So that's why I used them a lot against Pantoja. But when he's bullying someone on the back foot like Moreno, his elbows are very good just to cause maximum damage, just to bully and just knock around your opponent. But it's very rare that you see someone use elbows like this in MMA. And Figueiredo has a very diverse tool bag that doesn't get appreciated enough, but I also don't think it gets used enough. I think Figueiredo gets a little punch happy at times. But when he starts letting go with his elbows, he does some really, really good damage. Kicks. Everything that Deiveson Figueiredo throws is extremely hard, and that includes his absolutely devastating kicks. He has a very, very wide arsenal of kicks. Obviously, he has the standard low leg kick. He uses this against Moreno in their first and third fight mainly. Obviously, an opponent that's going to jab a lot, long stance, you're going to want to kick the leg. He also really, really loves the spinning back kick. Having a long, wide stance makes this quite a bit easier, and he'll target the body a lot of the time, as his big power makes opponents want to block up high. And when you fake a big spinning kick or you do a big spinning kick, most opponents' reaction is to either move out of the way or high guard, which opens up the body and allows the spin kick to come through. He'll also use the southpaw rear body kick, obviously targeting the liver, smashing the arms. He's very fond of that as well. And the good thing about these kicks is they're very big, right? They allow him to control range, corral his opponent, and he'll often use them on the front foot to push people back and just to get them where he wants them up against the cage, right? Conor McGregor did a similar thing back in featherweight, where he'd corral his opponent against the cage with the big spinning kicks and the jumping kicks to eventually line up his left hand. Figueiredo does a similar thing, but his goal is mainly pressure rather than one singular strike. Takedowns. While Deiveson Figueiredo is an absolutely terrifying striker, he is equally as good on the ground, and he has some excellent takedowns. He is really, really good at timing when his opponent blitzes in. Because of his low stance, he's able to get a lot of power, duck under, and time a really, really solid double leg on his opponents. He does this against Cheeto and Pantoja a lot, as they often will just blitz in. He'll also mix in back takes while standing, just dragging his opponent to the mat or using a good body lock. But he just has excellent timing. That's made even better by how he keeps his stance and how he moves his head and evades strikes. Jiu-Jitsu. Deiveson Figueiredo also has an incredibly good jiu-jitsu game. This man scrambles like a Tasmanian devil. What he does is technically good, but is made even better by his athleticism and flexibility. His ability to pull out his legs and hips from under himself and frame up is incredible. His ability to go for butterfly hooks and perform sweeps, go for submissions off of his back, perform trips, and just overall defend takedowns is absolutely incredible. Because of the way Figueiredo fights in bursts, his ability to scramble is made even better by his athleticism. And this is just shown throughout a lot of his fights where he does grapple a lot. Now, he also has incredibly good submissions as well. He's submitted Cody Garbrandt, Tim Elliott, and Joseph Benavidez. Against Garbrandt, he was able to take the back and get a rear naked choke. This was made really good by the way that he had the body triangle facing the ceiling, as if the body triangle is, if the lock is facing the ceiling, it's much, much harder to break and it's much, much harder to get out of that. Against Tim Elliott, he just timed the double leg and was able to lock up the submission. Same with Alex Perez. He was able to eventually work his way up from when Perez had him in guard. He was able to submit him, and Joseph Benavidez, that was just a bit scary. Dictating the pace. Deiveson Figueiredo is a very powerful and explosive fighter, right? So you can't fight like that throughout an entire 25-minute fight or even a 15-minute fight. So Deiveson Figueiredo fights in bursts, right? Because he's so big and powerful, opponents will often get timid, and that allows him to dictate the pace. You can very clearly tell when Figueiredo is in a position where he wants to attack and when he doesn't. So when he doesn't, he will often backpedal, defend, and have these very large movements that look like he's running away. And essentially, it's because he is. He doesn't want to engage when it's not on his terms. But when it is on his terms, he becomes absolutely vicious, battering in elbows, long combinations, kicks, and just having complete disregard for his opponent when he has the energy, right? And because of this burst fighting, it makes opponents confused about whether or not he's going to go, and sometimes they can get lulled into a low pace, and then Figueiredo will explode with shots and hurt them. This is beneficial at moments if you succeed with those bursts. If you do a lot of damage consistently with your bursts, that's good, but there is also the risk of getting out-volumed and out-pointed in the meantime. Flaws. Despite being an incredibly powerful and terrifying fighter, Deiveson Figueiredo has some pretty glaring flaws. The first of all is his cardio. Fighting with the intensity that he does, scrambling at the rate that he does, is impossible to maintain consistently over 15 or 25 minutes. That's why he fights in bursts. This, however, does run the risk of being outpointed and outvolumed if your opponent has better cardio and can mount some offense. Fights where this happened were Brandon Moreno in the first fight. Even though that was a draw, Moreno did still make that very competitive by pushing the pace when Figueiredo got tired, or against Petr Yan, where Yan was just peppering him with kicks, uppercuts, and boxing combinations. The second of all is his chin. This was more of a concern at flyweight in his later career than at bantamweight. But at flyweight, he cut massive amounts of weight. And while earlier in his career, he could essentially walk through shots and bully people, just acting as a brick wall, sort of rolling with the punches as he pleased, the older he got and the more weight he cut, his chin started to deteriorate. he eventually started getting rocked by Brandon Moreno back when he was still known as a counterpuncher, and even got dropped by a well-timed jab. But after he moved up to bantamweight, his chin does seem significantly better, but his cardio hasn't improved completely. There is also the leg kick, which not a lot of opponents have exploited against him, but Figueiredo does keep a very wide stance, and that leg kick is definitely there. There's also how he defends and responds to combinations. He often uses big movements, lots of big wide head movement, lots of big footwork, and that's fine. But because Figueiredo's cardio is a bit spotty, he can't maintain that defense throughout the entire fight. So when the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds come, you can start to tee off on him a little bit, most notably Petr Yan, 3rd round of their fight. Yan just started teeing off with uppercuts and flying knees because Figueiredo simply did not have the energy to move out of the way. Figueiredo, however, is an extremely good fighter, and he's very, very tough. I talk about his chin, but he has never been knocked out in the UFC, and he has fought some pretty good punches and taken some pretty hard shots. I talk about his cardio, but he has won a lot of his fights that have gone to the decision. And he hasn't been leg kicked a whole lot and has only lost to the best of the best in the UFC. He fights Cory Sandhagen in the UFC Iowa main event, and I think it's going to be a very interesting fight. Well, Cory is very technical and cerebral on the feet. He lacks the power and almost presence to command respect from his opponents as of late. He's coming off a pretty underwhelming performance against Umar Nurmagomedov, and before that had a bit of a dull performance against Rob Font. While Figueiredo is coming off of a loss, it's a highly competitive one to Petr Yan, but before that he racked up some impressive wins. I think this is a stylistically good matchup for Cory Sandhagen, but Figueiredo definitely does have the tools to beat Sandhagen. With his power punching, he can gain respect from Sandhagen. His impressive kicking game as well could do damage to Sandhagen's body, and his wrestling game mixed in could keep Sandhagen wary of how often he throws on the feet. Regardless, I'm extremely excited for that fight, and I can't wait. So anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on Deiveson Figueiredo as a whole, or his matchup with Sandhagen. You know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. See ya.